on the side slide.
Kilo Alpha 46, Pooh Bear Hamilby.
297. Hey, we got you in, Robbie.
Hello, welcome back to Fred in the Shed. I'm up in the shack and it's another beginner's guide to CB Radio, a series that is devoted to help people come back or start on CB Radio. Let's get started. This one is going to be a quick one, I do promise. It's all about connecting your new radio to a power source, be it power supply units or connecting it to a car. If you're new to CB Radio, you've never owned one before, and let's say you go out and buy a new radio like this President Truman, you're going to be a little bit shocked maybe because you'll get a connection lead to the power, but all you're going to get on the end are two bare wires. There is no connection plug. On my one here, you'll see that I've soldered on a couple of Y connectors, but basically you're just going to have bare wires. So what are you going to do about it then? Well, it depends how you want to use the radio. If you're only going to go mobile and you're going to use a basic radio, such as this little 4-watt Truman here, all you need to do is get yourself one of these, what used to be called a cigarette lighter socket plug. I mean, now I suppose it's an auxiliary. And simply wire that onto your power lead and that's job done. You can also buy female versions of this plug that connect on, which leaves you the two bare wires if you want to bring the radio inside and possibly connect it to a power supply unit. Cars have moved on a bit. Now, my cars are pretty old, so I've just got cigarette lighter sockets in my cars, and both of them are rated at a maximum of 10 amp draw. If you've got a more modern car, certainly I think these electric cars, yeah, auxiliary sockets I've been told go up to about 20 amps now. But the early ones are 10 amps. So you need to check very carefully what the maximum draw of your radio is, and you'd find that in the specification details or the booklet you get with the radio. This little President Truman, this is a fully legal UK FM AM radio. It's rated at 4 watts. And the ampage that this would draw is less than 2 amps, probably about 1.5 amps on full transmit on FM. Receive, it's probably about 1/4 of an amp. So this would be absolutely fine to wire in an auxiliary socket like that, a plug it into my car, no problem. Where you've got to be careful is if you move up to multi-mode radios like the CRT range, to say the 6900 or the Alinco DR135 DX10, then the ampage draw increases. 6900, for example, standard power, I forget, it's something like about 5 or 6 amps, so it probably would be okay in a cigarette lighter socket. If you go up to something like the 9900 or the Anytone 6666, that is a different story. That is going to pull more than 10 amps on sideband on full power. So something like that, you just don't want to be plugging that into your car electrics and end up fusing it, or at the worst case you might actually melt the socket. If you're running a powerful sideband radio, the best alternative to using the auxiliary socket is to wire the radio directly to the battery. All radios come with fuses in line, so you shouldn't have a problem there. Alternatively, what a lot of DXs do is they simply buy a second car battery. That totally eliminates the car's electrical system, any problems there, because sometimes your car electrical system, especially when you've got the engine running, might cause you issues. It might give you a bit of QRM. These electric cars, I've got absolutely no idea what that would do. I know some of them, even when they're not turned on, sometimes they're heating the battery in a cold weather. Again, that might give you QRM. So they buy a second battery or one of these like leisure pack batteries, you know, the type that you might take camping with you, and then that completely removes the car situation. If you want to bring your CB radio indoors and use it as a home base, you're going to need to buy yourself a power supply unit, a PSU. If, like me, you've come back to the hobby after a break, it's possible, it's just possible, you might still have your original power supply you used back in the day. This is the one that I bought way back in 1981, would you believe? A Bremmy stabilised 13.8 3 amp power supply. I think we all had those, very popular. That would work absolutely fine on a standard CB radio, 4 watts AM, 4 watts FM. Same thing here. This was new old stock, but it's a power supply from the day, a Wallace. That's got a maximum of 3 amp consistent draw. These old power supplies work absolutely fine. If you want to buy a new power supply, I would say go for a 5 amp power supply for a standard radio. Always give yourself that little bit extra. You don't want to be anywhere close to the limit of the power supply. You'll find those on Thunderpole, at Knights on the UK, CB suppliers on eBay. Let's imagine that you want a bit extra. You want to go to a multi-mode. You want to go to a dark side radio. Like the CRT 6900, this is what we've all got nowadays. These two power supplies at 3 amps, consistent power. This radio is too powerful. If we tried to run it on these supplies, we could listen, but if we transmitted, say on FM, 40 watts, these would overload, they'd get hot. The audio on the radio would suffer. It just wouldn't sound very nice because it hasn't got enough ampage. We'd need to move up. I forget what this draws. I did test it. I think it's about 6 or 7 amps, something like that. But once again, you'd have to check what radio you're going to buy. Always go more, always go higher. It won't cost you that much more money. So typically, I always recommend that you look at maybe a 10 to 12 amp power supply. Again, all over the CB shops. That should be perfect for a 6900. Let's take it up another step. Let's go for a more powerful sideband radio. Let's take the CRT 9900, the Anytone 6666. These are powerful. On the bench, these are tested at about 100 watts maximum power on sideband. That's going to pull at least 10, possibly 11 amps. It's almost as much as a HF radio. Now, when you go up to this stage, I would say personally, I would say go straight for a 30 amp power supply. It's going to cost you a little bit more money initially, but it gives you not only that extra headroom that you haven't got to worry that you're going to be overloading your PSU, but if in the future, and the chances are if you're going to go straight into a 9900, you're going to stick with the hobby for a while. If in the future you do end up buying a HF radio, maybe you're going to do your ticket, your ham radio license ticket, and good luck to you. And yeah, you buy a HF radio, a 30 amp supply will do anything. There's plenty of these Chinese made power supplies on the market. Unfortunately, they are a little bit more expensive. It does make the entry point into radio that little bit more expensive. This is the one that I bought a few years ago. This is a Charman's Multicon SM30. 30 amp supply here. Does have an adjustable voltage. It's got a noise offset that I've never really used. It can show you the voltage or the amp draw, which is quite useful. I've got another one. Let me zoom up here a sec. This is my main power supply unit that I use in the shack for my illegal HF radios. This is a QJE 30 amp supply. It's a generic make from China. You'll see this under all different brands. It's pretty much the same thing. It does have a cooling fan built into the back. It's got a noise offset, which I don't use. Also got a voltage adjust. Quite useful, this one, because you've got smaller little 3 amp clip sockets there if you want to just plug in a standard CB radio. And also you've got a maximum 10 amp cigarette lighter socket output, and that's quite useful if you're going to maybe use your CB radio in the car and then you want to bring it indoors. Dead simple, plug it straight into the 10 amp supply. Now then, I do know that me saying you should start on a 30 amp supply, they are expensive, and we are living in expensive times at the moment. There is an alternative if you want to start with a sideband radio, but you want to keep the cost down, and that is to get an LED power supply. Let me show you. This is one that I built a few years ago. Hopefully that's going to come out on camera. Now, these power supplies are all over eBay, over Amazon. They're a switch mode supply. They are incredibly cheap compared to a proper radio PSU unit. They're designed for LED lighting. They're in one of those enclosed ceilings you get in offices. This would be put up into the ceiling and then forgotten about. I forget how much they are. I think this is a 15 or 16 amp unit, and I believe it was about 10 or 12 pounds. So they are cheap. Some people scream blue murder and they say avoid these. They're dangerous. They're not as good as a genuine CB supply, but I don't know really. I don't think they are dangerous, because if you do go into offices and such like hospitals, everything, this is what they're going to be using in the LED lighting. It's like anything else. If you buy cheap, there might be a slight risk. Now I've had this one's 2017. I've been using this with my CRT 9900, my CRT 6900. I believe it's rated at about 16 amps. The voltage is adjustable. I did do a video on this, by the way. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to watch the whole video. The voltage is adjustable. I did fit a small little voltmeter there so I could keep an eye on the voltage so it wasn't peaking. The only thing is they're not insulated, as you can see, because they're designed to go into a ceiling, so you have to put it into an enclosure. My choice is probably not the best choice, actually. I just bought this cheap Wilko hobby box for $1.99, and I put that in there. And as one gentleman pointed out, and he was quite correct to point out, even though he got a little bit excited about it, I haven't put any air vents or air holes in my enclosure. That is a mistake. I really need to do that. You could put a small little computer cooling fan. To be fair, I have run this for a few years and it doesn't get hot enough to cause me any problems. I think the guy said at the time that I was going to die. And that hasn't happened, I'm still here. But yeah, if you do put it in an enclosure, make sure you put some vent holes. I've also got two of these in the shack. I've got the larger units. These are 33 amps each. I painted them blue, but they're normally silver. Again, they've been outside all weathers, summers, winters we've had in the UK. That's been supplying radios in the shack. They work absolutely perfect. The fans on those are a little bit noisy, but they haven't shorted. I haven't died. I haven't electrocuted myself, and they work absolutely fine. The next beginner's guide video I'll make, I think we'll tackle CB linear amplifiers, burners, George Foreman's. Some people absolutely love them. Some people have got really, really big amplifiers and they run loads and loads of power. Other people can't stand them, loathe them, think they're the worst thing that happened to CB radio. I'm a little in the middle. I do have a couple at the moment. I've had a few. I think they're okay in certain circumstances, but we'll discuss that in more detail when I get to the next video. But as for this one, as always, there's the thumb up from Fred in the Shed. Please give me the thumbs down below. I'd appreciate it. It helps me, helps the channel. Stay safe and stay warm, because it's bloody cold up here when I'm making this one. We've got snow on the ground when I'm making this. This is December. It's cold. So please stay safe. There's the old thumb. Cheers. I'll catch you on the next one, guys.